Rifle!
Today we have a special installment of This Awful Yu-Gi-Oh card was good, so let's just get right into that.
Shame on the nigga who tried to run game on a nigga who's buck wild with the trigger. Shame.
What's up, my Nimrods? It's Gage, coming back at you guys again with another dose of that fresh, never frozen Yu-Gi-Oh content. I am really enthusiastic that you guys would spend just a couple of minutes with me here today, talk about a children's card game we both mutually enjoy so fucking much. If it's your first time here, don't be afraid to take that subscribe button and caress it gently to stay up to date when I upload subpar Yu-Gi-Oh content. Today is a very special episode of This Awful Yu-Gi-Oh card was good. Rather than just talking about a single card, we're going to talk about 3 cards. So we're going to be talking about these awful Yu-Gi-Oh cards that were somehow good. This is the series where we like to take a trip back into the Yu-Gi-Oh time machine and take a look at a card, or in this time, cards that in a vacuum are just god-awful, but were somehow, some way, meta-relevant at some point. You might be curious as to why I decided to lump these 3 cards into a special edition of this series. Well, it's because all of these 3 cards served the same purpose and they were all relevant at the same time, but it was up to the player's preference which one they chose to play. The 3 cards we're going to be talking about today is Mischief of the Gnomes, Mischief of Yokai, as well as Stygian Dirge, and we're going to talk about the pros and cons of all 3 cards and talk about which one or ones saw the most play out of the 3. Now, as a general brush over, these 3 cards all share something in common, and that's the fact that they revolve around one mechanic, and that is level manipulation. Now, level manipulation wasn't really the most prevalent mechanic or the most prevalent way to stop strategies, even throughout the entire Synchro era, which all revolved strictly around maintaining same levels to bring out certain Synchro monsters. You really didn't see most of these level manipulation cards see play at all, just because they didn't do anything. Sure, they could mess up your opponent's plays just a little bit, but if you reduced your opponent's card levels by 1 or 2, they could still make Synchro monsters with that. You would just stop them from making bigger ones, presumably. And wasting an entire card slot on a card that could be like Torrential Tribute or something that could actually affect the board and destroy things when they were built. Playing a card that would reduce levels of your opponent's monsters even before they were summoned just didn't seem like it was worth it. That's the case for at least 2 of these cards. One of these cards in these 3 was actually released at a later time period and was made specifically for XYZs, or well, it was built with that in mind because that's the era that it was released in. Now in today's standard though, you will probably see absolutely none of these cards ever see play because level manipulation just doesn't matter in the slightest with the introduction of link monsters, which can use any effect monster of any varying level to summon any link dude. But throughout the entire Synchro and XYZ era, levels somewhat did matter to a point. In XYZs, both your monsters had to have the same level to be able to exceed into a monster. Synchros, of course, again, like I said, depending on the levels of your tuner and the monster you're tuning with, it would depend on what synchro you could bring out. So that's where this level manipulation mechanic was supposed to shine. Like I said, that really never panned out until one format, and that is Burning Abyss format with the release of Duelist Alliance. With the release of Duelist Alliance, we got a trifecta format that really developed from that. The Shadal's, Burning Abyss, and then Cleefworts all took the reins in the meta for the following stance, but Burning Abyss seemed to come out on top after their new support got announced and they started to get more support with following sets. Burning Abyss is an entire archetype that revolves around having level 3 fiends to bring out Dante, Traveler of the Burning Abyss, then mill more fiends to do more effects, do more wacky things. That's what the archetype has always been based around. You will not find a fiend in the Burning Abyss archetype that is not level 3. I keep stressing level 3 because that was one of the key inspirations of the deck, and that is where these level manipulation cards actually come in. Reducing your opponent's card levels from 3 to anything else would entirely fuck up the entire strategy of Burning Abyss because they also can't summon anything that's really not Dante, Traveler, or the Burning Abyss. So the fact that they have different levels to work with so they could bring out a rank 2 would actually sometimes, most of the time, just hurt them rather than help them. So we really started to see the forefront of these level manipulation cards. I'm going to go over all 3 of them real quick for you guys, and we'll talk about the pros and cons of each. The first one I'm going to go over is Mischief of Yokai, which is a normal trap card that reads each face-up monster on the field loses 2 levels until the end phase. You can remove and play this card from your graveyard to select one face-up monster and reduce its level by 1 until the end phase. This effect cannot be activated the same turn this card is sent to the graveyard. This card was released in Starstrike Blast. Now, rather than talking about this card on its own, let me talk about the one that's really similar to it, and that is Mischief of the Gnomes. Mischief of the Gnomes is a normal trap card that was released much later into the game, Secrets of Eternity actually, and this card reads, this turn reduce the levels of all monsters in each player's hand by 1, even after they are summoned/set. You can banish this card from the graveyard, then this turn reduce the levels of all monsters in each player's hand by 1, even after they are summoned or set. So these cards both having Mischief in the name, I guess they're supposed to be plays off of each other, but there's really key differences between the two, and it was really up to players' preference which one they chose to play, but I think there's one clear-cut winner in this case. Mischief of Yokai can only affect monsters that are face up on the field, so if your opponent has an established board, or they're already in the process of making an established board, you can flip Yokai on them and reduce their monsters' levels by 2, which would make them all level 1 if you're playing against Burning Abyss, because again, that's the main strategy we're up against. And then to boot, Yokai's removed from play effect allows you to reduce one monster's level by 1, which is still going to fuck up tremendously the Burning Abyss strategy, as when they have one monster that's level 3 and one monster that's level 2, they're not going to be able to XYZ back into their Dante. And keep in mind, we're not in an era where Link monsters even existed, so that wasn't really an option they had. I think Yokai was a pretty cool option because after your opponent had committed the 2 monsters on the board, you were able to then reduce them and catch your opponent by surprise, which for the most part would really throw them off their game. Also, this card was a lot more pretty than that of Mischief of the Gnomes because it was released as an ultra rare in Starstrike Blast and an ultimate rare, and ooh, the ultimate rare was a masterpiece. Now let's talk about Mischief of the Gnomes a little bit. And Mischief of the Gnomes is a card that actually got talked about by Old School Simo in one of his early Tech Tuesdays. Here's a clip.
Mischief of the Gnomes.
Mischief of the Gnomes is pretty cool because it can preemptively stop your opponent from making their plays by reducing all the monsters in their level by 1. And in that same vein, it has the same effect that you can banish from the graveyard and use the exact same thing again at a later turn. You can even use it on the same turn if you really wish. And a very interesting mechanic about Burning Abyss is that the Burning Abyss monsters all had to reveal themselves to then special themselves to the field. This was an important thing because you could chain Mischief of the Gnomes to that effect, then reduce its level by 1 to throw them off their game from there, similar to that of a Mischief of Yokai. So both Yokai and Gnomes serve kind of the same purpose, to still have kind of the same ability to throw your opponent off their game plan when they're playing against Burning Abyss, and because of the fact that they have to reveal the Burning Abyss in their hand first, and then you can chain Gnomes or you can chain Yokai if you wish, they really serve kind of the same purpose. I think if the Burning Abyss monsters had the inherent summon ability that they just don't have to reveal themselves and can slap themselves on the field, Gnomes wouldn't be nearly as good of a card. It's really up to player preference which one you want to say out of these two is a lot better. I think a lot of players tended to gravitate towards Gnomes because it affected the entire levels of your opponent's hand, rather than Yokai. If your opponent had more Burning Abyss monsters in their hand after you use its effect to just target one of them, they could then make Dante still and everything would be a-okay. So a lot of players tended to gravitate towards Gnomes for that reason. Even though it was like a marginal difference at best, it still made the difference to make this card at least better. Also, it was a cheaper alternative because Gnomes was printed in common, Yokai was only printed in one set. Even though Yokai was just way more pretty and still is way more pretty, Gnomes was just that cheaper and actually kind of better alternative than that. Now, both of those cards are pretty cool, but let's talk about the one that probably saw the most play out of all of them, and that card is Stygian Dirge. Stygian Dirge is a continuous trap card that reads, reduce the level of all monsters your opponent controls by 1. Very simple effect, but the reason this was better than those other two ones is it was a continuous trap card. Not only that, it was a continuous trap card that demanded to be dealt with because the opponent couldn't actually make any plays with level 2 Burning Abyss monsters, but it only affected your opponent's board, where a card like Mischief of the Gnome affected both players' hands, which would kind of suck in some ways. Stygian Dirge was actually a card that saw a decent price hike, and this was a thing that was actually rather difficult to get around since Burning Abyss doesn't have a lot of spot removal for spell or trap cards. They have a card like Cowcab, but I think Cowcab only bounces set spell or trap cards. Let me look that up real quick, because if that's wrong, that just makes me look dumb. Yes, Gage hit it with the big brains. It only targets set spell or trap cards, which Stygian Dirge is going to be face up on the field. So you can't use Cowcab versus that, so you're still in a world of hurt. Stygian Dirge tended to be the choice for a lot of players because moving into those later turns of the game, if you were able to have Stygian Dirge remain up on the field, you were almost guaranteed that W no matter what. Where if your opponent played strategically around Mischief of the Gnomes, maybe not just dumping their entire hand onto the field, they could still have a chance to win the game moving into those later turns if you weren't able to clean up. So out of all the cards that would reduce your opponent's levels and how useless they are, Stygian Dirge tended to be the top dog just because of that matchup of Burning Abyss. Making your opponent's Burning Abyss monsters level 2 hurt them drastically, and it would win many games. Altogether, like I said at the beginning of the video, I don't think we'll ever see these level manipulation cards see play again, just because we're at a point where link monsters exist and levels don't matter again in Yu-Gi-Oh! But back in the day, especially versus Burning Abyss, making sure your monsters were level 3 at all times was rather important, and the fact that there were cards that were able to stop it is both astounding and really cool. Don't think we'll ever see Stygian Dirge see play again though, but let me know what you guys think of these 3 cards down in the comment section below. Do you think we'll ever see level manipulation cards see a rise and play again? Love to hear what you guys think. That being said, if you guys liked the video, be sure to like the video, thumbs up the video, however express that you enjoyed the video. If you did like the video, please do consider subscribing to my Yu-Gi-Oh! YouTube channel. I upload regularly. My channel says Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but sometimes I sprinkle a little special something in between those days, like Tuesday, Thursday if I'm really feeling it. So staying subscribed could help you keep up on that. But that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, definitely subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching, guys. Nim signing out.